Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Kuchera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome in, Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you for those that are continuing to follow us on Facebook. We appreciate that very much. We want to continue to grow the audience any way we can. This is certainly a way to do it. Social media, a lot more people are active, interactive, and viewing and conversing social media, so we'll continue to do this. We hope this provides additional repeating every once in a while, opportunity. However, it is a podcast. We broadcast right here, and we record in our studio to show that video portion, but now the audio goes out as a podcast. So if you're watching the show and you have not downloaded the podcast, do me a favor, go download the podcast. You could just go online and do it now.
Do it now.
Type Real Estate Radio Live, really anywhere. Google, Stitcher, you go to iTunes, no matter where. You get the podcast, download it. That way you could listen to the show at your convenience. And also do me a favor, share it with family, coworkers, friends. We have seen a lot of growth over the last several years and want to continue to do that. I've said before, and I know Mike feels this way, we've been doing radio and podcasting now for, 7-8 years together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we always want to make sure that when we do the show, podcast, whatever it is, we did some live shows in the past, is that we provided you with as much, really valuable education and information. I don't ever want to, if I ever start to, someone will tell me and kick me off podcast or get me out doing something else. I don't ever want to do a show where it becomes monotonous or it's not fun or we just sit here and cite stats or data all day long because, really what I hope we continue to do, and I know Mike does too, is provide you with really good value. So it gets you thinking, and as you hear this information, you thought, gosh, I never thought of that. I never, knew that existed. I never knew I could do this. Things that engage and get you thinking, and that you hope that we could continue to provide you that value when it comes to really all aspects of real estate, not just buying and selling, but all kinds of different things. So today we got a fun title, and it's about what happens to real estate during a recession. That's right, the big R word. We had the Fed cut the rate by 0.25% today, and we were teasing before we started the show that President Trump was pounding the table saying cut it by 50 basis points, and it's kind of funny. He's very well, you know what, just to spite you, I'm going to cut it by 25. Yeah. So, real quickly, I'll share again what that means. There's a lot of confusion around when the Fed cuts the prime lending rate because the prime lending rate is tied to credit cards, home equity line of credits. Different loans are not tied to a 30-year mortgage, although ultimately what happens is the best way I could explain it is usually when the Fed, loosens like this, like when they start lowering the prime, usually there's some concerns. Concerns could be globally, economically, could be recession, could be maybe jobs. Now, we're in a unique environment right now, Mike, because it's a super strong job market. Again, nationwide. I know this is unique to area.
We're in a unique area, too, which is...
Yeah, I mean, corporate profits are still pretty good. There's a lot of positive things happening in the economy. However, if you look at it from a global perspective, and I'm not an expert at this, but I listen and I read enough in that, what's happening is throughout the world from a global economy, everyone, all these other nations and countries have lowered their interest rates aggressively over the last couple of years where we really haven't. So that has some people concerned, has some financial markets concerned. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what does this mean, because a lot of people maybe listening to the show might be thinking, what do you mean, what's a recession? I've never been in a recession. Mm-hmm. And so it could be unique. Some people could be experiencing it for the first time. Maybe some people don't even know how.
Maybe you're 10 years old listening to listen to this podcast. If you are, kudos to you.
I think it's a good idea. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you should do, what you should think about, and maybe planning for a recession. And we don't say this to make anybody nervous or afraid or, oh, my God, run for the country and hide and go into bunkers. But what we do want to say is prepare yourself. It's really the theme of the show. What do you need to know when it comes to real estate, lending, what position do you need to be in if, let's say, we do face a recession in 2020?
Yeah. It's always interesting to talk about recession, especially where we're sitting in the Bay Area. Right. We know that we live in our own little bubble and our own little world over here. So overall, the job market's good. The GDP has been getting better, which is good overall. But I know a lot of parts of the country are still struggling somewhat. So when we talk about recession, I know most of our listenership is local, right, in California. And so I think, well, what's the question? The question is, what are we going to do to prepare for that?
Yeah, what would you say? We're going to talk a little bit about beginning. We're not the experts, but I think we've been doing this long enough. We understand the dynamics.
We are, damn it. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe it's just as simple as make a decision on if you're staying, buying, or if it's a long. It could be just as simple as the long term is the way to look at it. But let's just say that, and again, we don't know this, but let's just say we're headed towards a recession a year from now, or next sometime in 2020. So we're sitting across the table with some potential clients. They're thinking about buying or selling. What kinds of things would you tell them, without, again, scaring them off? Just really supportive education. What kinds of things would you say? Hey, if he says Mike, or she says Mike, we're thinking about buying or we're thinking about selling, but I keep hearing about this recession. What do you think? So that would trigger what kind of conversation?
I definitely think it's very situational. Like, for example, so I'll go through a couple scenarios. One is people buy. I had a sign off today. People buying. They're buying a fixer-upper. They know they're going to be in there a long time. They got a good deal on the house, and they're fine. If there's a recession next year, whatever, they're going to ride through it. They're going to live there a long time, and they got a good deal. They got a great rate. So it's all good, and that's the way it should be. If you're thinking about buying property and you're going to be there a long time, then I wouldn't worry about a recession because we're going to get through it at some point. Now, if you're buying and you're a developer or a builder, you might be a little bit more hesitant right now, and I know they are because I work with them, and I know they're being much more stringent on analyzing deals and what they're going to do about a deal. So that's a couple of those scenarios. I'd say if you're a seller, if you're selling property, I'd get that damn thing on the market probably sooner than later and try to get it sold and price it aggressively because, I have some listings right now that we priced good and they sold and it's all good. I have some other ones that are struggling because they're a condo and the condo, we just talked about this before the show. I was running some stats, just real quick. I don't want to bore you with stats, but there's like 700 condos and townhouses in the entire county. I haven't seen that number that high in a long time. It's about half the number. There's about 1,400 single family. Typically, the ratio is more like 1,400 single family or 1,800 single family and like 400 or 500 condos and townhouses. What that tells me is the condo and townhouse market is lagging way behind because when the single family market gets better or more palatable to buyers, they buy that over a condo or townhouse. Nothing against anyone living in condo and townhouse. It's just a fact of life. Right. Anyways, getting back to my point is if you're going to sell, I would say, if there's a quote-unquote recession looming, you might want to do it before then. Okay. So
yeah, no, I would agree. I think the obvious one is if you're looking at a long-term play, don't worry about it. Don't even worry about a recession. And I mean, don't worry about it but Mike's right. I think that would be my suggestion as well. If it's a short-term play or you're thinking, I'm really thinking about buying, but now all of a sudden my job, it looks like I'm going to be transferring, a year from now or 6 months from now, or maybe they're doing a bunch of layoffs. I don't know. I would say if there's anything on the horizon, and most of us don't know what's going to happen, but if there's something on the horizon that you think could change your circumstances where you might be forced to sell or something like that, then I would say be careful. Because if you bought and maybe you had to relocate or you lost your job, I guess there's always you could try to rent it and things like that. But, that would be my piece of advice when it comes to the real estate side.
Yeah. And here's another one. We don't know on the investment side of things. They just passed statewide rent control. We should even do a podcast on this next week. Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a rent control expert. Obviously, I know a lot about it because I work with investors. But we don't know what that's going to do. I was just dealing with this earlier today. We have a rental property in Sacramento. We want to sell it. I called our property manager, and he's like, well, you should but the tenant has a lease in place until next year. But if I were you, I'd offer money to get the hell out of there soon, because you don't know what's going to happen in the new year with the rent control. And the laws in place are going to make it a lot harder for people to kick their tenants out next year.
Is this specifically in California? Or
this is California,
okay.
yeah. It just got passed. The governor passed it.
Okay.
And so we don't know what the statewide rent control is going to do to the investment side of things either.
Yeah.
So you got to really analyze. I guess my point is you got to analyze kind of what angle you're looking from. I've given you examples about investment, development, or just people buying a home for the long term, or people selling their home. I mean, it's all different angles when it comes to looking at the future. Obviously, no one can predict exactly what's going to happen, but we've seen a slowdown. It's been an uptick for how many years now? 10?
Long time.
Okay,
it's been a heck of a run.
That's a long cycle. That's probably the
Yeah.
longer cycles we've seen in the history of the country.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's what I would say.
I'll talk a little bit on the mortgage side now, which is, I think it's more critical to manage and understand what mortgage you're going to have and do a mortgage review. I've talked about this before, but ever more critical. So if someone would be sitting here, I'm interviewing me or them, or they're sitting across the table, and they say, Joe, how would I prepare? What should I know about a recession? I would say the number one thing is, if you have a mortgage, make sure you absolutely have, number one, the best mortgage rate you could get in a market like now, which is really low. Okay, so take advantage of those rates. And I know a lot of people go, I have 4.5% or 5%. It's not that bad. I lived with it for a while. But the reason why this becomes more important, now hear this out, in a recession. So in a recession, if it becomes problematic and people lose their jobs, or there becomes a job issue, or the values come down a little bit more, and then you get into a pinch and you can't afford, or you want to get an equity line, or something you want to do for your health reasons or anything else. Remember, life happens. A lot of stuff comes in the way that we don't know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So take a look and refinance. If your rate's over 4% and you're planning to be in this property, you should really take a refinancing, number one. Number two, if you have large exposure outside of your first somewhere, that could be very problematic in a recession. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a $300,000, $400,000 home equity line, and you have a great first. So now you got a huge exposure on this equity line, and those equity lines are adjustable interest rates. Well, the Fed just lowered the prime, and that's good temporarily, but that doesn't mean that could be reversed. And then here's the problem: if you're at a certain loan to value, and for some people, again, like Mike and I talk about, if in your home long term and you don't plan to access any money or anything, you're fine, doesn't matter. But for some people, if your home's worth $1 million right now, and over the next couple of years something happens and it, the market takes it to about 800, right, or whatever, that could make the difference in whether you could get a loan or not, or whether you have to get a loan with mortgage insurance or anything else.
Yeah.
And again, not to be overly dramatic, but these are things.
You're always so dramatic. Such a drama king.
That's me. So this is the thing that I would say.
That's a good point, though. I mean, really.
Yeah,
the value affects it big time.
Yeah, I mean, and I know this sounds funny, but seriously, if you have been wanting to remodel or add on or do something to your house, now's a great time to do it, and for two reasons. One, the home values have really come up in the last 8 to 10 years, so you're working with a loan to value that's probably on the higher level, right? Two, interest rates are near historic lows, so cost of money is cheap. Those are two of the very best reasons to do what you need to do right now. So if someone, again, said, what should I do to prepare from a mortgage perspective, Mike, I would say make sure you have the best rate possible based on your goals for your home. And then two, if you need to access money or do something, or if you have some outstanding liabilities, take care of them now just in case we go into a recession. And that would be, again, home equity lines, a lot of credit card debt could cause a lot of problems for people. And I've seen that so many times, unfortunately. It's also good to, one of the things we haven't really talked about, again, we've talked about it, but not a lot, but if we're talking specifically recession, I would also, if you haven't done it already, I would also put a home equity line on your house.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of those. I know Mike is too. So the reason home equity lines are great is
as long as you're not going to be an idiot with them.
Go out and buy a sports car or a boat or some gold chains.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you see some gold chains hanging from my neck on the next podcast, you know what's going on.
Nice equity line, Joe.
So, no, really, the home equity lines are great for what we call, people call them emergency funds or emergency access. And or what, something may happen, right? And you need 50 grand, 40, or whatever. And it's a great way to get money quick at a decent rate. And pay it back.
Quick.
Yeah, and pay it back quick.
But
those are the things you should do. And the reason why I say put the home equity on there now, I don't know if most people remember this. They probably don't, but maybe they do. So this was a great example. Now, I don't think there's anywhere close that we're going to repeat the 08 and 09 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But people took out home equity lines, in 5, 6, and 7, right? And then the market started coming down. The lenders were actually calling those and closing them down and shutting them down. Even if you had room on it, they'd come in and shut them down.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people remember that, but it was a real thing. And so the reason I mention that now is just be prepared. That would be what I'd say. Watch liabilities, watch debt. Debt becomes more problematic when you're in an environment like a recession, and then there's more problems that could potentially happen. So I would say that would overall the biggest thing to think about it. But again, I'll tell you the last thing I'll say about a recession is I wish I would have learned this years ago, and I was around enough smart people that did it, and it was still made me nervous to do it in 8, 9, and 10. And I hope that I learned my lesson. I hope that prepare for the rainy day, and prepare even more than that. Get excited about a downturn in the market where you can get a deal.
I was just going to say that. Prepare for a deal.
Yeah.
And that's
true.
I can't imagine how many people got really wealthy these last 10 years because they prepared.
Yep.
They saw the writing on the wall with 08 and 09, and they prepared, and they made a fortune these last few years. So get prepared, not just for yourself and for saving for a rainy day, but get prepared to maybe pick something up at the same time.
Yeah, that would be the last thing, and I think it's really important. If you prepare yourself for a cycle or something that turns again, whether it's the stock market, in this case we're talking about real estate, is what we follow every day, and you get an opportunity a year from now, or when most people are in a tough position, again, the real world is this. Some people will say, well, how could you take advantage of this or take advantage of that? But, if someone is forced to sell their home at a loss or a certain price where you could pick it up for a better deal, you're not a bad person for doing it. I mean, there's a reason. You're not forcing this person to sell their home. So what Mike's saying, we're saying is, if you have the resources, look at this as a positive perspective. You never know. You might be able to pick up some deals down the road.
Yeah, I'm not feeling bad. I'm feeling bad about it. These damn paper straws they make you use nowadays.
Man, that's another.
These are miserable. Maybe more miserable than a recession.
So see, when I hear that,
hashtag first world problems.
Right. When I think about that, I think about who's going to come up with an idea
to get rid of these paper.
To get rid of the paper straws.
I was just sipping out of this thing
ridiculous.
This whole show, and I'm like, this thing is terrible. It's melting. It's melting away. But hey, life could be worse, right?
Yeah, no, paper straws. It's funny. I think they ought to just make. Don't they have them now? It's like I laugh because you have the two little ones now.
Cups
the sippies.
Yeah, they have
sippy cups.
Adult sippy cups at Starbucks.
They used to get thrown around the house all the time.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to wrap things up. But again, in a focus, just to summarize and kind of wrap it all up in a nice, tidy little bow here. What happens to real estate during recession? We just kind of gave you an overview. The key is don't panic. There's ups and downs. There always will be. But the value really for all of us and the message that we talk about over and over again until you're probably nauseated is educate and inform yourself so that when these things come up, you make better decisions, you find better people, you go to people like us or others you trust for advice or for information. And that's really the key about this show or anything else is prepare yourself for the good stuff, prepare yourself for the bad stuff, and whether it's good or bad, you hope that you make the best decisions.
Yeah.
Right?
Got to make good decisions, got to plan for the future, and depending on what situation or what you need help with, just make sure you educate and set out a plan to go forward. In the meantime, get out there and buy houses. It's a great time to buy. Yeah, it is. It's a super time to buy. I got some houses you can buy. Please, bring me an offer. All right. For more information on real estate, if you need to contact Mike, how do they get Mike D? MikeDsells.com or 408-630-0101. And as always, if you need to reach me, RERadiolive.com, Joe at RERadiolive.com, or 408-838-9060. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great afternoon. You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com.
That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.